Welcome to BigTent USA. My name is John Cooper. I'm an advisor to BigTent, and I'm delighted to host today's discussion with Aaron Frank of Focus for Democracy and Anton Moore, founder of DJs at the Polls. At BigTent, we put democracy above partisanship. We are a national woman-led, sometimes the man gets involved, coalition dedicated to protecting democracy, women's reproductive rights, and our children and our grandchildren's future through education and civic engagement. I'm honored to introduce our guests. Aaron Frank is the co-founder and president of Focus for Democracy. Aaron has spent the last 20 years managing a private investment partnership and now applies that diligence to political investing through Focus for Democracy. Aaron received his JD from Emory Law School and lectures at the University of San Francisco. Anton Moore is founder of DJs at the Polls, a nationwide get out the vote organization that places DJs at polling locations. He has run programs in Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and North Carolina. He is also the founder of Unity in the Community, a Philadelphia-based organization dedicated to changing the lives of others in the South Philly area. Anton is a former Black entertainment television and radio producer and was a speaker at the 2016 National Convention, Democratic National Convention, sorry. With that, I'll have Aaron take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, John. Thank you for inviting us to BigTent. I've been a fan for years, and just want to say hi to everybody who's here. I see a lot of familiar faces, and hey, folks, and it's great to see you. Also some new faces. So let me just give a background to Focus for Democracy. So Focus for Democracy is a network of donors. We as a team are pro bono advisors. We advise our network of donors, but also other donors as to where our dollars, your dollars, can have the biggest impact on democracy. So this really started when my wife Julia and I, after Trump was elected, we wanted to do something meaningful. We realized that we were in a moment in our history that was unlike any in our lifetime, and was really calling for us to take some action. We realized that we wanted to help through donating, and we wanted to give big. We realized that everything was on the line in that election, in the next election, everything that we cared about. But we wanted to make sure that our dollars would be effective. And so it took a long time to find what we came to find was there was a small group of evaluators and analysts that did evidence-based evaluation to determine where our dollars could have the biggest impact. We made the largest gift of our life to anything, and then shared that with some friends, and this started to spread. So we have now teamed with those professionals that were doing that evaluation. Focus for Democracy was born, and we spend all of our time now doing deep analysis on where donations can have the biggest impact to help with our democracy. So I'm going to pull up my slideshow. For those of you that are with Focus for Democracy, today I'm going to spend a little extra time mainly focusing on our methodology and not so much on the different programs. So let me pull up these slides. Can you guys see that? Yep. All right. So just a word that about our independence, all of the money we raise goes directly to the programs we recommend. We think this is a really key point about Focus for Democracy. We aren't in this to raise any money for ourselves. When we make a recommendation, the money goes directly to those programs. All of our expenses are paid for separately. So this independence means that when we recommend something, the only interest we have in it is that we've determined, after usually months of deep analysis, that these programs are the most effective place to put money to help with our democracy. Our methodology, our method is to maximize net Democratic votes in the races that tip governing power. This is about democracy right now. There's only one party that is pro-democracy, and those are the Democrats. So we're trying to maximize net Democratic votes in those races. We are very focused on the presidency this year. So we are focused on these 7 presidential swing states. But even within these states, we try to be particularly strategic. There's something called the nested dolls strategy. We used to call it the Russian doll strategy, but I think this is more politically correct. And what this means is we try to produce votes in a way that will produce, when we get a new vote, we want to produce votes up and down the ballot where possible. So let's focus in on Arizona by way of example. So in Arizona, if we produce a new net Democratic vote in this shaded area here in Maricopa County, that's not going to just get us one net Democratic vote for the most important presidential election of our lifetime. It's also going to get us a net Democratic vote for an important competitive Senate race, key to keeping the Senate. But it'll also get us an important vote for a House race in Arizona District 1, but also a vote for a key state legislative district. So producing one net Democratic vote in these nested races can produce votes up and down the ballot. So when possible, we want our first votes to go to the most effective places. Our criteria, we're looking for programs that are cost effective. As I said, that means for the dollars invested, we want the most net Democratic votes. And I will talk about what I mean when I say net Democratic votes a little bit later. We want programs that are otherwise underfunded. There are a lot of great programs out there. And if there's something that's effective, but other people are funding it, that's great. But we want to add new votes that wouldn't be funded without our dollars. So we're looking for programs that are otherwise underfunded. We want them to be rigorously tested, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. And then finally, we want them to have an impact in 2024 and beyond. So a key question is, how do we know which programs produce votes? And the answer is we know by looking at evidence from tests. And it's not just any test. When we say we want something rigorously tested, we want the best possible evidence. And so the type of tests we look for, let me explain. But I'll start by just talking about these 3 economists that won the Nobel Prize in Economics back in 2019. They won the Nobel Prize in Economics for transforming the way development aid was given. So billions are spent every year on different programs, whether it be bed nets in Africa or microloans in India, clean water systems. What these 3 economists said was, look, we're spending billions of dollars and we don't really know which one of these programs are effective and which ones aren't. And the best way to determine that are using randomized control trials. These are the same type of trials that you would use when you're testing a new medicine or a new vaccine. It's the gold standard for causal inference. And they said, look, we don't only have to use these in medical trials, you can use these in the field. And by bringing randomized control trials to the field, they completely transformed the world of development aid, and they won a Nobel Prize for it. Well, while that revolution was happening in the development world, the same revolution was happening in the world of political tactics. The first randomized control trial was run on political tactics in 1981 by a guy named Sandy Newman, who is my partner at evaluation at Focus for Democracy. But by running randomized control trials, we can actually get to what works and what doesn't. So let me explain for a moment how they work. So here's a group of young people. So you take a group of people like this and you divide them randomly into 2 different groups. One will be a control group and one will be a treatment group. And it's really important that you randomize how you divide them so that everything is identical between the groups. You should have the same gender makeup, the same racial makeup, the same geographic makeup, because you've randomly divided them. And then the top group, we'll call that the treatment group, will get the intervention. If this is a drug trial, maybe it's a flu shot, right? And the bottom group is the control group and won't get anything. Now, you're not actually taking them and dividing them up. They're actually still out there all mixed in the same place. They're riding the same buses and touching the same doorknobs and everything. The only difference is the top group gets the flu shot and the bottom group doesn't. And then after flu season, you then look at the different outcomes. The top group, there was 1 case of flu. The bottom group, there were 10 cases of flu. And simple math just tells you that the flu shot prevented 9 cases of flu. This is obviously a simplified example because we would have much bigger numbers. But this same methodology can be used not just for a flu shot, but with a political tactic. So an intervention might be, let's say, a texting program where you're texting people to turn out new net Democratic votes. The top group, the treatment group, will get this communication. The bottom group will get none. And then after the election, you look at the different outcomes. So the top group, there were 10 of them voted for Democrats. The bottom 6 voted for Democrats. And so from this, we can say that that treatment produced 4 extra Democratic votes. They were all exposed to the same TV ads and saw the same billboards and watched the same news. The only difference was that treatment. And if you don't have a control group like that, there's no way to tell that this intervention made the difference. And so these are randomized control trials. And this is what we're looking for in the programs that we recommend. Our analyst, David Nickerson, was Barack Obama's director of experiments and has probably designed more randomized control trial for political tactics than anybody alive. And so that we're really looking for strong evidentiary base. The way we see the 2024 election for president, we are going to focus in on these 7 presidential swing states. Whoever wins the majority of the electoral votes in these states will be the next president of the United States. So this is where the game is going to be won and lost. And so this is where we're focusing. We're preparing for a very close election. Most modern elections have been close since 1988. Every Democratic presidential loss has been by 118,000 votes or less, often much less. If we look at the last 2 elections in 2016, Donald Trump, despite losing the popular vote, won the Electoral College in the presidency by just 77,000 votes in 3 states. Out of 140 million votes cast, this is just a mere rounding error. And in 2020, Joe Biden kept Donald Trump out of from a second term by an even slimmer margin, just 43,000 votes in 3 states. So when we look at this election, what's at stake in the billions of dollars that will be spent? The question is, can a small network or a large network like Focus for Democracy actually impact the outcome of the election? The answer is yes, because when you look at these margins, we know that the programs that we're funding can produce more votes in these swing states than the margins of victory in the last 2 elections. We expect that Focus for Democracy's network at this point has produced somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000 net Democratic votes through the programs that have been funded so far. And so this brings me to the next definitional thing, is what do we mean by a net Democratic vote? This is a very specific sort of technical term. Lots of groups talk about their programs. They talk about the metrics, how many doors were knocked, how many phone calls were made, how many letters were sent out. None of those tell you the outcome and how many net Democratic votes. So let me just kind of give an example of how we would calculate this. So the question is, what do we mean by net Democratic vote? So let's say there's a program and they knock on 500 doors. It's fantastic, great, you've knocked on 500 doors. It doesn't tell us anything about how many net Democratic votes you got. You've knocked on those doors. How many conversations did you have? Okay, so you had 100 conversations. Fantastic. And you can say, the people that we spoke to, we can tell 65 of them voted. Great, but that doesn't tell us that those conversations produced those votes. How many of those people would have voted otherwise? And through using a randomized control trial, you can look at what the control group, how the control group voted, and compare that to these 100 people. And so perhaps from that randomized control trial, you can tell that this intervention, these conversations produced 5 extra votes. It's fantastic. All right. So now you've produced 5 net votes, but that's still not telling us net Democratic votes, because you have to ask, how did these 5 people vote? And let's say they voted 60% for Democrats. That's about what young people have, how they young people have voted, or the Latino community have voted. So 60%, you would get 3 out of those 5 voting for Democrats, 2 out of 5 voting for Republicans. So those 2 Republican votes cancel out the two of the net of the new Democratic votes. And so you're left with 1 net Democratic vote. And so that's what we mean when we say we're getting net Democratic votes. That's how we count that. And so in this case, if you were to have paid that canvasser sort of the typical wage to knock on 500 doors, this would cost about $2,500 to get that vote. All right, when we look at the number of votes Focus for Democracy's groups can produce compared to other programs, I just showed you get out the vote door knocking. If you give to this is how many votes you would get for $100 million. We expect Focus for Democracy to raise $100 million. And in fact, we think we're on pace to producing more than that this year. So if you were to spend $100 million on get out the vote door knocking, you produce about, I don't have the numbers here, but it looks about 40,000 votes. If you were to give to a typical presidential campaign or super PAC, you produce, looks like just over 50,000 votes. But if you gave to the programs that Focus for Democracy is recommending, because they produce so many more net Democratic votes for the money, you're now producing over 200,000 net Democratic votes. And remember, since 1988, every Democratic presidential loss has been by 118,000 votes or less. And the difference between funding programs that produce the most net Democratic votes for the money and funding just typical average programs can be the difference between winning and losing the election. And that's the whole point of what Focus for Democracy is doing. We want the dollars that we spend, you spend, our network spend to produce the most net Democratic votes. We want to find underfunded programs where we're adding new votes and we're adding them at a high pace. And the whole point is to win the election. So our network started, as I said, with just a few of us that started to spread the word to some friends. Our network grows from people that come to our events, that participate, and then they spread the word to their friends. And this network has grown organically. So we now have over 10,000 donors, active donors, and a network that's tens of thousands of people that come to our events. This is really just spread person to person, from friends inviting friends. There's a tremendous amount of trust within the network because of that. And it's a very powerful model. I want to talk now, as we transition, about another part of our network that we usually don't talk about. Focus for Democracy is now this network of donors, and we focus all of our time on doing this analysis and trying to produce the most net Democratic votes on things that we fund. There's another sort of less known aspect to our network called Focus Action Network. And this is a volunteer program, but it's really more of an innovation kind of an innovation lab. As we have been looking at programs to fund that are effective, from time to time, we identify, when I say we, I'm taking credit for really Julia, who's on the call here, who has really stood this up, have seen holes in the movement where there are programs that should be run, but nobody is running them. We can't fund anything because they're not out there. And so Focus Action Network has done a series of, has created a number of programs where nobody was doing something, created a new program, and then have been run by our volunteers within our network. A lot of them are really amazing. Would love to spend a lot of time on them. It started off with poll worker recruitment in 2020, where our network came together and recruited 2,400 poll workers in the city of Philadelphia, or in Pennsylvania, in about a month. And there have been a number of them that have grown out of that. From these programs, one program stood out that we're going to highlight right now that we usually don't talk about. In 2020, our volunteers actually funded a series of a suite of programs in the city of Philadelphia. One of them we found to be particularly compelling, and that's a program called DJs at the Polls. DJs at the Polls, we had no evidence for it then. So in 2022, we put together a randomized control trial to get that, to have it tested. Our volunteers helped run that program, we designed the experiment and ran it in 2022. The randomized controlled trial came back incredibly strong, one of the best performing programs in the cycle. We then ran another experiment in 2023, came back with great results, and now DJs at the Polls is getting scaled this year. So just by way of introduction, before I turn it over to Anton Moore, I want to talk about the problem. These are the 7 presidential states. A number of these states have urban areas with high Black population that will be key to winning in November. I want to point out specifically this blue wall: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Each of these states is won by a very, very small margin. The Black community votes for Democrats at a rate that's close to 90%. So they're key to the presidential, to the wins. If we look at a place like Pennsylvania, this is how Pennsylvania votes. Many people say that Pennsylvania is Philadelphia and Pittsburgh with Alabama in between. But if you look at Philadelphia, you can see there's a density of Democratic votes that come out of there. And a lot of this comes from the Black community. And if we look at these 3 states, for every 100 Black voters in the state of Pennsylvania, 48 of them live in Philadelphia. For every 100 Black voters in Michigan, 53 live in Detroit. And for every 100 Black voters in Wisconsin, 71 live in Milwaukee County. So you can see that these urban environments are going to be key for getting net Democratic votes. The problem was in 2022, we saw turnout down in each of these states. If we look at 22 as a midterm compared to 2018, in Philadelphia, it was down 17%, in Detroit down 12%, and Milwaukee down 20%. So this is the problem that we need to address going into 2020. We need turnout to be high in these key urban areas. And one of the programs that we've seen that increases turnout the most is DJs at the Polls. It's a great program that, like I said, has been innovated and incubated through our network. But really the man who started it and who runs it and the sort of the engine behind it is Anton Moore. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anton. And Anton, you take it. After he's done, I'm going to come back and give you a review of what happened with their randomized control trials. Anton, over to you.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that, and also thank partner in crime as well, Julia, who's Julia Aaron are like the brain behind this as well. So it's DJ at the. My name is Anton Moore. DJ at the Polls 2024 program. So as I mentioned, my name is Anton Moore. I'm a co-founder of DJ at the Polls. It was co-founded in Philadelphia in 2008. To give you a little bit of my background, I come from radio. I worked at iHeart Radio here in Philadelphia, working with different DJs. Also, I worked at a BET Music Channel on a show called BET Rap City, where we booked DJs to actually come on our show, interact with the host, and also interact with artists that we booked for the show. So I come from the background of DJs, so it was just like a no-brainer and say, you know what? Let's have some DJs at the polls and make it cool for people to vote. So some of the states that we'll be hitting is Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. We're looking for over 8,500 DJs to be at the polls on election day with a high number of people of color. Mm. So we hire local DJs to perform at the polls, and the reason why we do that is because DJs are like your text message. DJs are like your tastemakers. We actually let the voters know, and send a text message to them and let them know that the DJ is going to be at their polling location. To recruit DJs, we actually tap into local networks. One of our top recruiters is DJ Diamond Cuts. She helped lead the charge here in Philadelphia and nationally, and we connect with stations like radio stations in Detroit, like 97.9 WJLB, Power 99 FM, and V 100.7 in Milwaukee. As we mentioned, DJs are like cultural organizers. They promote their shows and promote what they're doing. So having them actually, a part of this initiative is something big. So our DJs create posts about voting. They're letting the voters know, hey, look, I'm here. Make sure you come out. And these are people that they know from their neighborhood. In fact, check out this clip.
DJ Lawrence, y'all at Jenkins Elementary School today. Get out and vote, y'all.
Our DJs, like I said, our DJs create that moment, and as you can see in this video.
And we vibing.
For the citizens as well.
Last time to get funky. To the right now. To the left.
Look how cool that is. That young man was tearing it up, dancing out there at the polls with his parents. To our next slide. Oh, and so local DJs invite their communities to come out to the polls. Check out this DJ from Detroit.
DJs at the polls today, 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. I'm at Bagley Elementary School on the west side, Curtis, 8100 Curtis Avenue. Pull up on me, get your vote on, bring me a smoothie, say hello, get your dance on, and make sure you vote.
Look at that. DJs reminding people.
DJs at the polls today.
So our DJs perform at polls with a high number of people of color. Mm-hmm. Now, look, in North Carolina, this is funny. We had a county commissioner in North Carolina who was just excited about seeing a DJ at this poll. Check out this video, y'all.
Hello, Facebook. This is George Dunlap coming to you live from a polling location in Charlotte, North Carolina. Listen, I can't think of a better place to be right now than at a polling place, particularly because we have a DJ welcoming people to the polls. He's a part of DJs at the polls. DJs at the polls.
DJs at the polls, get your dance on all the way to the polls. Make sure you vote.
Look at the county commissioner. He was excited. So let's go into promoting the program. As I talked about earlier, we're using radio, ads, and on-air announcements to actually promote the program. We have Power 99 FM in Philly. We have WJLB in Detroit, Hot 1079 in Atlanta. We got Hip Hop Beats in Phoenix and 100.7 in Milwaukee. We have a host of other radio stations that we're going to be working with to actually promote the program, recruit DJs, and let people know about DJ at the Post. So there are promotions. So one of the things we're going to be doing that is so very cool, we're going to take some of our DJs. We're creating an event where as though our DJ at the Polls DJs are going to be teaching kids how to DJ. So not only are we going to be encouraging people to vote, but also we want to teach people the craft. So we'll be doing that in select cities all across the United States. People always ask, how do you promote it or see things, on the news and stuff like that? Well, we had local news outlets announce that DJs will be performing at the polls. Check this out.
Organization is placing DJs around the country at polling places to keep the energy high and promote the vote as a way to encourage voters on Election Day. One of those DJs will be right here in Erie. DJs at the Polls is a nonpartisan affiliated group who placed some 5,000 DJs across the country at polling places last November. This Tuesday, they'll be at East Middle School to entertain people as they exercise their right to vote. A spokesperson says they strive to make Election Day feel like a holiday and use music as a way to engage others.
For 50 years.
That is so cool. The news is even getting right out. And so we have many other outlets that covered our DJs, and some in Pennsylvania, Dauphin County, they was just covering us all over. Let's check out this clip.
Bond was hired by DJs at the Polls. That's a nonprofit group that hires local musicians like Bond to work outside polling places during elections so they can draw a crowd and get people excited to cast their ballot. This is Bond's first year performing for the group. He was in Harrisburg in the morning before heading to York. Although Bond's been spinning the track for more than 15 years, he says today has been a whole new experience.
This might not have been their number one choice for voting, but if it's a local for them, they get to see it. I get to interact with them, they get to interact with me, so it's like a tennis match.
That is so cool. DJ at the polls all over. You can go to the next clip. Oh, so 1 week prior to the election, postcards will be sent announcing DJs at polls and a QR code to look up polling locations. That's cool. So we're covering all bases. So we have Movement Labs. Polling place images text will be sent out prior to election day. So you get to check out and see what your polling location looks like when Movement Labs send out that text message. So you can check this out right here. We have the DJs, they post messages actually coming from the polls. Let's check this out to my man that was actually in Detroit.
Today is vote day. I'm out here with DJs at the polls. I'm spinning tunes, man. Come out, rock with me, you know what I'm saying? This is your opportunity to let your voice be heard. This is your opportunity. So come on down. Like I said, I'm here at Dibby High School. 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then I'm at Pollard. I'll be tapping back in when I get over there. That's not until 3 o'clock. So, yeah, man, election, vote day, turn out, vote day.
All the energy and the love. So that's our 2024 program. Here are our 2024 program goals. DJ at the polls will reach 6 million African-American voters in battleground states. The total budget is $16.8 million, and we have a gap of $9.5 million. We need your help. So if you want to, donate to DJ at the Polls, please log on to our website, djatthepolls.org/donate. Also email us, team@djthepolls.org. And Aaron, I think that's my time. I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thanks so much, Anton. What's so great about this program is it's so fun and simple. Everybody can understand it immediately, but it's also got a lot of data behind it. So I want to just jump in and just talk about randomized control trials that were run and just what the results were here. So this is a very confusing graph when you first look at it. So let me just try to explain it to you. The Analyst Institute has done a meta-analysis of all these different programs. You can see social pressure mail, non-social pressure mail, Canvas, phone, all of these across the bottom. And what you're seeing up here is the average effect size. And so here you can see this is 0 right here. This is 1%. And you can see that these graphs show that most programs fall less than 1%, a lot of them very close to 0. The sort of the far outer limits here is a 2% turnout effect. So I want to show you what DJs at the polls produced in 2022. Largest turnout effect here is about 2% for their meta-analysis. In Philadelphia, the randomized control trial showed a 3% turnout boost, which is really incredible. And in 2023, we ran this again in Virginia, and it got a 1.5% turnout boost across all polling locations. But if we look just at those with majority people of color districts, it was a 3.9% turnout boost. In this presidential year, they are focusing on districts that have high number of people of color in them. So this is the metric here that's going to be most important to the way they're focusing things in 2024. So these are incredible numbers. As I showed before, it's turnout of the Black population, particularly in these key presidential swing states, will be so important. And this is one of the tools in the toolbox that has been tested and proven to do that. And I'm really thrilled that it's going to be scaled this year. And just for the record, you can see that they've raised about $7 million. All of that has come from outside of the Focus for Democracy network. So it is a program that has really taken off. It was sort of stood up by Focus for Democracy, our Focus Action Network, but it has been scaled so far by outside funders who have found this. And I'll just say that the key funders behind it are some of the smartest analysts out there outside of Focus for Democracy. So with that, we can turn to questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Anton and Aaron. This was very detailed and fascinating. And I have a few questions for you, but I did want to ask because people have brought up some stuff in the chat. So I want to get to those first. First of all, you have a fan in Tucson named Claudia Miller, and she's hoping that you're going to give DJs at the polls will give Tucson a little love. And if you do, Anton, she might not vote by mail, but go to a polling place to cast her vote with a DJ. So what's your plan in Tucson?
We do have a plan in Tucson, and we have a plan in Phoenix. So it's a couple of areas. Me and Julie was just on a radio call, and we was looking at the radio station in Tucson and the radio station in Phoenix. So yes, we will be covering that area.
So maybe Julia, you've worked a lot on the targeting of polling locations. Do you want to talk about how the metrics that you've used to target, to identify which polling locations you target?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. So what we've done is we've established a threshold. So our program threshold is our polling locations that have at least 300 people of color and or 225 African-American voters. So if any of those precincts meet that threshold, we plan to place DJs there. And
great. Okay. So
go ahead.
No. I love that. I just wanted to make sure Claudia knows she can go vote with a DJ rather than do an absentee ballot.
You know what? I would say do your absentee ballot so we make sure it's in, and then go hang out with the DJs.
Leslie, I just want to make sure everyone saw this because it's a really good question about restriction on distance from polling places for DJs. So, Julia, why don't you just tell everybody about that? Because that is a really good question.
Well, what's wonderful is we had funding to actually do pilot primaries. And so Anton just ran a whole pilot primary and has been to every state. So Anton, you want to just talk a little bit about every state you've been in so far and how we've tested that?
So we've been to North Carolina, Phoenix, Vegas, of course, Pennsylvania, Michigan, all over the state, Wisconsin, and we really didn't have any problem. We made sure we trained our DJs to be a certain distance away from the door. So we probably had a problem here and there, but for the most part, it was very successful. DJs enjoyed themselves, voters enjoyed it, and it was a successful what do we call pilot that we ran in those states.
Yeah, and what's been interesting is to see that each poll location is like its own little entity. And so we've noticed some issues coming up with certain churches, et cetera, but actually we were welcome in every single state we were in. And whether or not the poll location made an issue out of it was case by case. And sometimes it just happened to be an individual poll worker. But what's interesting is we're partnering with a group or we're retaining a law firm that will make sure that we abide by all electioneering laws. But playing music at the polls is not considered electioneering, which is awesome. Yet we're still going to abide by the boundaries of electioneering just to be safe. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, it's really important. To pull back a little bit, I just wanted to. I got a question offline, but Aaron and Julia, you're doing this work. Are you ever getting worried about anyone from MAGA going after you? Anyways, any concerns for you? Because we all get worried about people.
I'm looking at Julia here.
Yeah, not fun. Not to think about that. Well, go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was going to say, look, people have brought that up. We haven't had any problems, but we expect the more prominent Focus for Democracy is, or DJs is, the more visible we'll be. But look, we don't have any choice. We have to win this election. We
bring it on.
Gotta go full out, and then better. It's better if the MAGA doesn't have the Oval Office if they're going to come after you than if they do. So let's just win.
And she said, Prescott, Arizona is ruby red, but we are trying to unseat our House rep, Eli Crane, with a Native American Dem from the Navajo Nation, which is a huge challenge to get out the Native American votes. Any ideas?
I just want to say we're really excited about this. So we are definitely looking to cite DJs from the community at the polls in the Navajo Nation. And so we're testing this out. It'll be a challenge. Some of the poll locations are located in these very rural areas, very far from people's homes. But that is something that we're working on in Arizona, is to place DJs from the Native American community at the polls in those polling locations.
Well, components to this program I'd like to just kind of underscore.
Okay.
First of all, it's
Great.
a 501. This is a nonpartisan program. It's a
right.
501c3 program, which is fantastic. But one of the things that we've seen sort of through research is that the people that you're trying to get out to vote, these are people that may not vote in a presidential election in these swing states. So they're really folks that aren't paying attention to politics. And through program after program, what we've seen is the way to engage non-politically engaged people is through lifestyle programs. A lot of people want to do this through talking about the importance of the election or through some political issue. And what has been shown is if you engage people through lifestyle, that's the best way to get folks that are not focused on politics out. The other part of it is what we've seen are the people that are low propensity voters. They tend to vote on election day. They're not mail-in voters. They're not early voters. Almost by definition, these are not folks that are that are focused on trying to get to vote. So election day is a key time for that, and so it's another component of DJs, which I think is really important. Is that this is the last chance to get them, and by making it fun through lifestyle, this is the best way to focus on those folks.
Yeah, and Anton, you speak personally about, I love the idea of the DJ being like the cultural organizer. Speak a little bit about that, because you're yourself a DJ. Like, what does that look like, and how does that sort of work on election day?
You always look at them certain DJs to call them up and say, "Hey, Rob from down the street, we need you to do a wedding. We need you to do a cookout. We need you to do a school event." So they're like the cultural influencers. So when people show up, it's cool to know the DJ. Like, oh, shout out to Kathy Douglas. You know what I mean, from BigTent. having having that relationship, and it's being from your neighborhood where you grew up at, it connects with the voters, because it may be a voter that's sitting there. They may, because the biggest problem we have, and me and Julia talked about this, is that it's not that people are not registered to vote. It's the fact that people are registered, but they're not going to the polls. That's what we want to push for. Who are those people that's sitting home that's saying, should I vote? Well, we have your neighborhood DJ, and that's helping you push the envelope and actually get to the polls.
I'd just like to say too, I really think that this idea that Anton had, that he's been running for almost close to 2 decades, is so brilliant, because these DJs are professionals. They're used to going to a new place, setting up, getting the crowd excited, So in a way, when we hire these, and a lot of these professional DJs are like playing at clubs and do their own promotions, so they're very adept at that. When they come to a poll location, they treat it like a gig. Okay, where should I set up? What makes sense? How can I, make it fun for the voters? And so I think it's just it's beautiful, because they come with all their equipment. It makes sense. And what I love is they're reaching a lot of people that are low turnout, maybe not necessarily interested politically, voters. And it kind of activates them to be more vote engaged. And so and it gets them doing what they're meant to do, which is to be a DJ. So it's really fun.
Yeah. A couple things just about sort of promoting the program. Are you going to be doing stuff on TikTok, like just to like recruit DJs and get the word out? Are you going to, is TikTok a thing? I mean, I know it's a thing, but you know what I mean, for your DJs. Yeah.
We're not going to use any of that. No, I'm joking with you. We're going to use the Twitter, the Instagrams, the TikToks, the radio. We're going to be putting posters up in neighborhoods. You're going to see it all over, because we believe that this election is really important. So we need to use every method and every tool in the toolbox to get the word out, to get people to the election, get people to the polls on election day.
Yeah, great. Any thoughts of getting into Florida for this? There's some folks from Florida on the call, and they really want you there, Anton. They really want you there.
Well, it's up in the air right now. Julia's working it out, and we don't know yet, but it's definitely in a conversation.
If we did go to Florida, it would be like a smaller program, but it would be, Anton may well go into Florida.
Okay. And you're really focusing on African American communities, because someone did ask a question about heavily Hispanic communities. You're really focused on African American communities.
Well, go ahead, Julia.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, Anton, there's in Arizona, the population of African Americans is pretty small. And so in Arizona and Nevada, it will be primarily Hispanic. So I mentioned the threshold's 225 African American, but it's also 300. Threshold's also at least 300 people of color. So I think in some states, it depends on the state.
And Aaron, Lynn Barkley said, what does Focus for Democracy need from us?
I want to thank you for that question. Focus for Democracy has grown just person to person. So I would just invite you, come to an event. And if it makes sense to you, donate, or invite your community. But we grow as a community through folks like you.
Yeah, it's great. Well, the pro-democracy coalition is growing.
Aaron and Julia and Anton, when people step under the big tent, they always learn something new. And this is a perfect example of those who work the front lines being supported by people in the behind the scenes. And it's what we all need to do for this election to go the proper way. So keep coming under the Big Tent.